Welcome to the Gifts for Glory podcast, where we celebrate and promote men and women using their gifts for God's glory. Know someone who is making an impact for God's kingdom using their gifts, talents, and passions? We'd love to meet them. Send us an email at podcast@giftsforglory.com. That's podcast@gifts4glory.com. And now here is our host, Dave Ebert.
Hello, friends and neighbors, and welcome to Gifts for Glory. Thank you so much for joining us, whether you're catching us live right here on Facebook or YouTube, or you're watching the replay on the Creative Motion Network on Roku, or the podcast on the Taken TV Network podcast channel, or wherever you're picking up your podcast. We thank you for joining us. Please, where possible, like, share, comment, and review. Help people find the show and find the stories of these amazing people that we're able to share each week in and week out. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you for joining us. Really looking forward to this episode. Feel free to leave a comment if you have a comment or question about what we're talking about, what our guests may be talking about. This show is live right now here on Facebook and YouTube, and we would love your feedback. We'd love your questions as well. And as we get started, for those of you that maybe are new to the show or don't know, part of Gifts for Glory Ministries is Well-Versed Comedy. We're an improv comedy ministry, and we use the gift of laughter and the love of the Lord to spread the joy of the Lord. We're based in Chicago. We can tour all over the Midwest. So if you have a church or a ministry that would love to bring in some entertainment, contact us. We'd love to bring clean, family-friendly comedy that's completely interactive. Every show is completely different because it's improvised. It's based as much off of us as it is you, the audience. So reach out to us and let us know if you're interested in talking about bringing us in for an event. We could be the entertainment for a speaker, or we can also present the gospel or a testimony as part of our show. Whatever you want to help reach out to people, to encourage them, to bring them closer to the cross of Christ. That's what we want to do. Wellversedcomedy.com, wellversedcomedy.com, or email us at improv@wellversedcomedy.com. That's improv@wellversedcomedy.com. And now let's get on with our Devotions with Dave segment. Today's Devotion with Dave segment is actually coming from the shortest verse in the Bible. Depending on your translations, it's either 2, 3, or 4 words. Even the Amplified version, which tends to take a verse that's the size of a molehill, make a mountain out of it. Even in the Amplified version, it's only 2 words. So this verse is John 11:35. Jesus wept. Now, why would I pick this as a devotional verse? Because this passage, this verse, these 2 words tell us a mountain of information. Number one, Jesus experienced emotions. Because he was fully God and fully man, he was able to experience emotions. So we should never be afraid of our emotions. We should never feel like our emotions are sinful. What happens is sometimes we let our emotions have too much control, and we allow our emotions to become almost an idol in our lives. But the fact that we experience an emotion, that in of itself is not a sin. So I know that a lot of people feel like if I get angry, I've sinned. Not necessarily. Emotions, even the emotion of fear, that is something that God has given us to elicit a response. And if that response draws you closer to God, then it's working. If it drives you further from God, then you've allowed it to become something that's potentially sinful. So that's one of the things we learn. Number 2, Jesus, he was not a wimp. He was not weak. He was not soft. He was tender, but he wasn't soft. So he grew up a carpenter. He was a strong, manly man. And he shows us that as a manly man of God, it is okay to weep. It is okay to show emotion. It is okay to weep and mourn with those who are mourning. The next thing I also want to say is that he experienced all this, and he went through all this fully knowing that he was going to raise Lazarus, because this was when Mary and Martha and the whole family was together just weeping over the passing of Lazarus. Jesus wept with them. He knew, and he still had the hope of the resurrection of Lazarus. He still had the hope, of course, of God in everlasting life, but he still wept. So I want to encourage you today, don't be afraid of your emotions. Don't be afraid to experience them, but don't let them control you. Let them be a catalyst Let them be a catalyst to a response. So, there I went for a few minutes. It's amazing what you can do when you dive into the word and just think about what it really says. John 11:35, Jesus wept. So much we can take from every morsel there in the Bible. So that was our Devotions with Dave segment. Thank you so much for checking us out. And now it's time to bring in our guest at this time. Scott, he's an actor, he's a magician, a filmmaker, a roundtable host. He's also a part-time Italian plumber. Uh, he joins us to talk about faith, magic, film, and we probably will get into some discussion of one of our mutual favorites, Vindication. You can connect with Scott at greatscottmagician.com, or you can link to his different Facebook pages, the Great Scott Facebook page, the Mario Players Facebook page, as well as the Facebook page for his short film, Lucifer and the Father. All those links are in our show notes. So at this time, please welcome our guest at this time, the great Scott. Scott, welcome to the Gifts for Glory podcast.
Hello, Dave. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. When you did that description in that introduction, a part-time Italian plumber, I really hope I'm not going to get any requests for people to actually fix their plumbing, because I don't know anything about plumbing.
Well,
I probably should just take a moment to explain what you meant by that. I do. One of my specialties is impersonating Mario from the Mario Brothers for kids' parties. So apparently it's a voice I can do very well. So, I dress up in the whole thing, and it's a lot of fun.
So do you actually go around chasing turtles and trying to find coins?
No, I don't. No, I just went. I had this here just in case this came up, and we were right up at the gate with it. This is my Mario hat right here. See that? And this is my Super Deluxe Mario COVID mask. See? Hello, right. I'm a Mario. How are you? It's nice to see you. Thank you for having me here on the Gifts for Glory. It's a lot of fun. Thank you so much.
Now, do you have an evil twin?
I don't have an evil twin.
Do you have the hat and the mask to switch back and forth?
What do you mean?
Between Wario, the evil twin of Mario.
I don't like Mario.
Okay. All right, I had to ask. You're also a magician, and we were talking before we went on the air that there are many that might think that being a man of God and a magician might be at odds with each other, but being a magician and a Christian really don't live in a world of conflict, because it can go hand in hand, or maybe hand in sleight of hand.
That's true. Well, one thing we were discussing before we started is one verse that I will always open. I do shows for churches, but I also do shows for like private parties and people and stuff like that, and the reason I do that is because of 1 Peter 4:10. 1 Peter 4:10 says that you should use whatever gifts you have received to serve others, administrating God's grace in its various forms, which is one of the reasons why I got drawn to your show, because it was called Gifts for Glory. That's basically what I live my life by. I mean, anytime I will go out to, like, for example, the Reconciler, which is right here on my wall. I apologize that you guys have to see my front door here. The other side of my apartment had some plumbing problems that we can't show on camera. But
so again, anyway, we're reiterating the fact that you're only Mario. You're not an actual plumber.
Exactly. But I mean, things like pursuing projects like that, and Lucifer and the Father, I've tried to tell people in the past, that I have been misunderstood sometimes, as trying to, make a name for myself. And maybe sometimes I've gotten, caught up in that. Like you were talking about during your devotional, sometimes your emotions can become what you worship. Sometimes if you're not careful, your dreams can become what you worship, or your talents can become what you worship if you're not careful. And I've fallen into those traps. But my life goal is to make sure that I don't end up like the servant who hid his talents away. You know what I mean? In the parable of Jesus. That is the one thing I'm not going to be. I will try every idea that comes in my head, and if most of them fail, then I can't stand before God and say I didn't try. One day say I didn't try.
And I think that there's that delicate balance, because I think the enemy is very good at, you hear the phrase often that idle hands are the devil's workshop. But I also think busy hands can be, because he's very good at using your momentum against you and just giving you that little nudge to get you off course, where you may not notice in the first few steps, but eventually you look back and realize you completely veered. So it's very easy for the enemy to use your emotions, your talents, your gifts in a way that goes against you if you're not careful. You don't root yourself in the word, and you don't root yourself in times of prayer. So it's okay to make this. Yeah,
that's actually in line with what you were asking, because magic and sleight of hand is not evil. It's about how you use it. Like, for example, you can I've had so many people say, you've made my day because you amazed me, and that's when I feel like I'm doing God's work. But what I never do is, if someone is saying, I never claim to have any powers, I never have, I was telling you this before we started. Penn and Teller are two very famous magicians, both of who are both big atheists, but they have one approach to their magic that I totally agree with, and that's the fact that you don't need a cover story. You don't tell it. Penn even said one time, if you tell the audience that what they're seeing is real magic, you're making them complicit in a lie you're telling them. And that's one thing that they always are upfront with what they're doing is fake or is a trick, and that's one approach I do. I always tell people beforehand. There's one line I love to use. If I'm doing one time a long time ago, I was doing a birthday party, and there was a very smart kid in the front row, probably about 8 years old, and he yells out, "Hey, I saw what you're doing. You're cheating." Let me tell you something right now. Telling a magician he's cheating is like telling a surgeon that he's operating.
Right.
It's what we do. This is all cheating. None of it is real. None of the stuff that I'm going to show you here tonight is real magic. It's all sleight of hand, so to speak.
Very good. And for me, magic, when it's done like with pure motives, even if it's not by a Christian, but when it's done purely and not as a way to exalt oneself or to say, I am the great, magnificent, whatever. It's very similar to pro wrestling. You kind of go knowing that there's a trick, there's a sleight of hand, there's a story being told, there's something for fun. You don't go to the wrestling match to yell out, "Oh, that's fake," unless the guys are just not caring about what they're doing.
Right.
Very similar. You don't go to see Spider-Man No Way From Home and yell, "Oh, Tom Holland's not actually hanging from that building." No, you go for the entertainment. You go for the distraction. So
You ever heard the movie The Prestige?
Yes.
My favorite line, it's not my favorite movie, but I think my favorite line in a movie ever is at the end of that movie when Hugh Jackman says, "The audience knows the truth, but if you can fool them for just a second, you get to see something very special." And I've tried to impress upon people, there maybe would have been a time that I liked being the center of attention, that I liked all eyes on me, to borrow a phrase from a rapper that I never listened to. But you really, in some ways, I feel blessed to see providing that look on someone's faces of amazement is just, it's not about being smarter than them. It's not about one-upping them. It's about providing that wonder.
Yeah.
Providing that smile and stuff. And, God I actually came to know the Lord because of another Christian magician's performance, believe it or not. And there was one point that I actually realized that Christian magicians can be a very big weapon and a real big threat to the enemy, because what is more a threat to the enemy than a believer who knows how deceivers think?
Wow. That's powerful.
In some ways, it's kind of like being a soldier who has the enemy's battle plans.
Exactly.
Like, for example, I know how to lift a person's watch. I would never steal a person's watch, but I know how to do it.
How do you do it? Okay.
Well, I'm not going to give away here because it actually is used in a couple magic tricks. But I'm talking about magic tricks where the magician will lift the person's watch and then the watch will appear something later and they give it back to the person.
Right.
But those skills, as we know, can be misused. And therein lies the difference between using your gift for entertainment and using your gift to steal and profit from it.
Sure. Now, you alluded to a moment ago that you have some tricks ready, some examples ready. But
first I have to make sure that you can see them all. I have a test trick here real quickly. This is the test trick that I always do, because sometimes I'm on a big stage, sometimes I'm on a small stage. All right? This is the smallest coin the U.S. government makes by size, not by value. I'm sorry, by value, not by size. What would that be?
Penny.
You're right. Now, Dave, can you see this penny okay?
Yes.
Okay. Now, if I want a big stage, this would be harder to see, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, what would I do under those circumstances? I would reach into my pocket for this. What's this?
Magnifying glass.
Right. And then I would put the magnifying glass over the penny and yell at you in the back row and say, "Can you see it now?" Of course, then you could, because the penny would be much bigger. because of the
Ooh.
magnifying glass.
Very nice. I like it.
Yes. So you can see that a whole lot better now. Am I right?
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing magicians have to do to keep their dexterity is exercises with their fingers. Now this is a finger fitness exercise called either the steeplechase or walking the dog, depending on which magician you're talking to. And basically, it's an exercise where you roll a coin across your fingers to keep your dexterity. You might have seen Mel Gibson do this in Maverick with a poker chip.
Yeah.
Normally, you need a 50-cent piece to do this, but this is one of the few pennies you can do it with. But I'm guessing that even in a small auditorium, people would have trouble seeing this.
Right.
What do you do under those circumstances? Well, it's really quite simple. You do this right here.
Nice. All right. Bigger penny. Usually inflation works the other way.
That's true. And here's something magicians have been doing for years. You know what that's called? Throwing in your 2 cents. And the best part about that trick is after you do it, you can't say Great Scott has no sense.
Right. Very
Now,
cool.
Would you like to see a demonstration of how you can use a trick to teach a gospel message or to teach a very simple gospel concept?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see it.
All right. Now, one rule of magic other than don't give your secrets away is don't do the same trick twice. So sorry to disappoint everybody out there. I'm not going to make this dollar bill bigger. I already did that trick. Okay?
All right.
Now, this dollar bill is going to represent something for this. I want you guys to get a close look at it here, so I'm going to get a little closer to the camera. This bill right here is going to represent the love of our Lord, because you were talking in your devotional about how sometimes we think that if we get angry, we've sinned or something like that. And I don't think we realize sometimes how perfect God's love is and how unbreakable it is. Well, I'm going to use this dollar bill to demonstrate that. Now, normally when you would do this, you would borrow a bill from somebody from the audience to make sure that it's not rigged. Now, since you and I are together virtually, I couldn't borrow $1 from you.
Right.
So how am I going to prove that this isn't a rigged dollar bill? Here's how. Dave, I've got 3 magic markers here. We have not prearranged this. Is that right?
Correct.
Tell me a color.
We'll go blue.
Okay. Now, tell me something you want me to write on the face of this bill so we will know that I couldn't have rigged this somehow.
Just put Scott.
Okay, fair enough. All right. All right, and I just did that freehand, so I think we can all agree that I can't do a bill switch here somehow. Right. Everybody will note this is the same bill the whole time. Now, over here, I didn't use this pen because it wouldn't have shown up on camera otherwise. Okay? Now, sometimes I will do a joke. One thing that magicians will sometimes say that they are is mind readers. But let me tell you right now, magicians can't read minds. They make they know how to make you think that they can read your minds. Mm-hmm. And this is how they do it. They basically make you think what they want you to think, so it looks like they're reading their minds. Let me demonstrate. Dave, I'm going to read your mind. In just a couple of seconds, you're going to be thinking, man, I'm glad that bill's not mine. Now, are you happy this bill's not yours?
Yeah.
See, I made you think what I wanted you to think, so it looked like I was reading your mind. But no. That's not basically the way this works. You can see it going right through. It even goes right through the Scott that I wrote on there that you told me to write on there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But you remember how I said that this bill represents the love of God, right?
Right.
Jesus is the same yesterday, the same, and tomorrow, and he went to the cross for us, and his love is unbreakable.
Huh. That happened.
Yes, it did.
So neither one of us have, high quality video equipment. You're using a phone. I'm using a laptop. So that was not CGI.
No, it was not. Now, I have something else here on the table I can show you that you were asking me about, getting around what people say about magic. One thing that I should tell you is that not only when it comes to churches, but when it comes to doing birthday parties, the one trick that every magician kind of is expected to do at some point is card tricks. You'll notice I even have cards on my tie here.
Yeah.
But if you want to make a living at being a magician, I would say probably 75 to 80% of the time I'm performing for children. And I cannot remember the last time I met a 5-year-old who knew the difference between a club, a diamond, a heart, and a spade. Mm-hmm. And even though there are even churches that will allow you to be a Christian magician that will say that playing cards should be nowhere near the church because they represent gambling.
Right.
Like a lot of stuff, I say it's not what it is, it's what you do with it. Okay.
Right.
Cards are just cards with ink printed on them. Okay. If you use them for gambling, that's fine. If you use them for something else, that's fine too. But still, the bigger issue was the fact that kids didn't know the different suits. However, kids do know colors and numbers.
Mm-hmm.
So I do my card tricks with Uno cards rather than playing cards. And this basically solves the problem for when I'm in a situation where people don't want playing cards. Now, can you see the number on there?
Yeah.
What number is it?
It's a red 8.
It's a red, and I was going to ask you what color it was. Okay. Now, if you were taking a look through the Bible, do you know what's a number that would appear quite a bit? I'll give you a hint. It comes right before 8.
7.
7. Some actually say that 7 is God's number because it's a perfect number. Now, people wonder how you do card tricks. People think you need to train your hands for years to get the cards to do what you want, when in fact you train the cards to do what you want. And I've trained this Uno deck to locate all 4 sevens in an Uno deck. Now, in order to locate any card, you need a locator card. And we're going to use this wild card as a locator card because wild cards can be anything. Now, I'm going to set this down for just a second to show you this scarf here. Nothing on this side and nothing on this side, correct? Okay. Going to pick the glass back up. Whoops. Dave, do you see that wild card there? You see it, David? Watch. The first 7 that I think appears in the Bible is God created the world in 6 days, and on the 7th day he rested.
Nice.
Okay.
So that's why you picked the green 7, because that's when he made the earth.
No. that actually might work. You never know. Okay. Now, are you familiar with the story of Joshua and the Battle of Jericho?
Yeah.
I love that story. You want to know why? I grew up in a household that proved that if you yelled loud enough, the walls came down.
Yeah.
Thank
All
you.
right.
I think that's kind of a lame joke. Thank you for laughing at that, though. But if you remember that story, 6 days they marched around Jericho, and then on the 7th day, they marched 7 times.
Very
Now,
nice.
Wild cards tend to get tired after locating a card or two, so we need to find another one here. This is a good locator card. The card that everybody loves to get, but everybody hates to get, but everybody loves to dish out. The draw 4 wild.
Many
Now,
families have split over that card.
Yes, that is true. One thing that it says in the Bible is that it talks about Jesus talks a lot about forgiving your enemies. And he said, and when someone says to him, how many times should we forgive your enemies? Jesus says, I tell you the truth. Not 7 times, but 70 times 7.
Yep.
Now, as I've done this, you notice that I did the green 7 first because you pointed it out. What color was the second 7?
Blue.
And what color was the one I just popped up there?
Yellow.
Yeah. You know what? There's an actor named Nicolas Cage. He actually appeared in one of the Left Behind remakes. I remember him saying in an interview once on the Jay Leno show that 7 was his lucky number because anytime he saw a 7 somewhere, something lucky would happen to him. Well, ever since the day I saw that interview, I've always ended this trick in one way, and that is by having the red 7 come up last. Because red is the color of the blood of Jesus, which is the only thing that can save you and not some lucky number.
Wow. Very nice.
Thank you.
Very cool. So for those listening, find out more about our guest, the Great Scott, at greatscottmagician.com for booking. Also links to his other pages. And there's something else that you do. You also make, or before I go any further, did you have another trick, or was that what you had?
I do have other ones here, but we don't have to do them all at once. If you want to come back to another one later, we can.
Okay. All right. Let's move on. Let's talk about filmmaking. I know that you have a film that's either out or getting ready to come out, Lucifer and the Father.
I should clarify something here. I didn't want to correct you because I didn't want to be picky. I am technically not a filmmaker. I could never direct a film. I'm actually a writer.
Okay.
I'm a writer. There is a difference between shooting a film and writing a film. So gotcha. I'm an idea guy, and I write scripts, and then Sean Justice takes my choppy pieces of whatever you want to call them and turns them into masterpieces. So, and Reconciler was the first film that we made, and it was it was a dream come true to make it. It was actually born out of a tragedy. Sean Justice's second oldest son very tragically died in an accident at a camp. And long story short, some settlement money was awarded to him and his family, and he only wanted to do things to honor his son Caleb's memory. So if you look at the credits of Reconciler, the only executive producer is Caleb Justice, because the movie was financed with that. We were actually trying to make another film that we're still trying to make called The Twin Master. That and we wound up making this one instead. And we were on the verge of trying to do a crowd because I think The Chosen had just had its first season, and I think everybody saw The Chosen and said, hey, if he can do crowdfunds, so can I. Mm-hmm. So we decided to, after looking for investor after investor and having a whole bunch of false starts, I talked Sean into, why don't we do a Kickstarter to try to finance The Twin Master? And 2 weeks before we were going to launch it, the pandemic hit. So we decided not to waste that. And to be honest with you, that's one thing that actually came out of it, because it allowed me to think about, because I was upset like everybody was. Sure. I don't think there's anybody who was happy when the pandemic hit. So I think that's probably an obvious statement. But it got me asking, what could we make and stay within the guidelines that were being put in place at the time? And I had this idea for a movie that was Bible-based and had to do with how Lucifer and God were involved in certain situations. And I found out that the way that you do a crowdfund on VidAngel, which is where The Chosen got made, is you have to have a short film shot first.
Okay.
And I had this skit that I had written for my church, which was, the inspiration from it was actually kind of interesting. I don't know if you've ever heard of the movie Heat with Robert De Niro and Al Pacino.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've heard of it.
Okay. If you've heard of it, the big scene in that movie is the 5-minute scene right in the middle where they're a cop and a robber, and they have a conversation at a diner, like as Pacino puts it, two regular fellas. And the two of them playing this game of verbal tennis is like considered a great piece of cinema. I don't know how it happened, but one day I'm just watching that and I'm like, hey, what if that were God and the devil? And I wrote a skit for my church. Fast forward to the pandemic's happening. I'm looking to do something with Sean, and there was an actor in The Reconciler named Bob Shepard. He's actually very well known as the hearing aid commercial guy. He's been in a couple Christian films. He had wanted to work with us again, but we had a whole bunch of false starts with him being involved in projects, and I thought that he would. He's a guy with some mileage on him. He has a very gentle voice, and I thought, if you're ever going to have a human other than George Burns or Morgan Freeman play God, he would be great at it. And it's very easy to be evil, so I decided to cast myself as Lucifer. So I play Lucifer, Bob Shepard plays the father, and it's about what if basically God went to Lucifer and said, we need to talk, and invited him to sit down for a cup of coffee. He moves him around some too, but we shot that last June, financed completely on a Indiegogo crowdfund. And we're hoping that once it's done, we're going to be shipping it around to all of the Christian film festivals this year. And hopefully we can take I know we're both fans of the show Vindication.
Oh, yeah.
In some ways, I'm kind of taking a page from Jared's playbook, only I'm doing it intentionally. This is a short film that could stand alone or could serve as a sequel pilot to a mini series we want to make that would show God and Lucifer involved in different Bible stories.
Okay. Nice. I like it. So the link is in the show notes and is on our screen right now. Facebook.com/Lucifer- and the Father. You can search for it, Lucifer and the Father, on Facebook, or look for the link in the show notes. And you're involved in a lot of projects. We talked a little bit about the Mario players that you play Mario. You're also a magician. So how did you get into the Mario players? And is that faith-based, or is that just strictly a side thing that you do?
That's a side thing, although I will say that my best friend, Ben Neal, who plays Luigi, he's the worship leader of our church. So the two main guys who are involved in it, we are believers. And but the Mario players in some ways has evolved into a way that you can be at least for me and Ben, can be a light to the world, so to speak. Because the Mario aspect of it was actually an accident. Okay? I didn't set out I'm not this mad Nintendo fan who decided to set out to do this show with a whole bunch of people playing Mario characters. It started out as something I wanted to create the A-team of entertainment, was what I called it. Remember the A-team with Mr. T and George Papard and everything like that? You know how each guy on the team had a different skill?
Yeah.
You never see an entertainment group like that. You never see an entertainment group where one person does something. I almost thought you could have like a group of people who were a self-contained variety show.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
I like that.
There's sketch comedy groups. You know about those.
Yeah.
There's singing groups. You know what I mean? But I've never seen an A-team. I wanted to create a group where everybody did something different. I tried to market that. It failed miserably. I realized you needed a theme to tie it all together. And during the pandemic, I came up with the idea of playing Mario characters because I had stumbled onto I'd been working with this company that was doing human characters visiting kids out in their yard, like during the pandemic. And they were all princesses who were wearing COVID masks. And I was like, okay, what human character do I look like? And I was like, oh, I can do a Mario's voice. I kind of look like a Mario. I know I'm not. And but then I found the Mario mask that I was just wearing, with the mustache. And I've never really liked cosplaying with fake mustaches because they're just so itchy.
Mm-hmm.
And let's be honest here. You think any human being can duplicate Mario's smile? I don't think so.
No.
So basically, the idea of the Mario players is each one of us is a different Mario character, but each one of us has a different performance art. Mario's the magician. I mentioned that Ben, my best friend, plays Luigi as our worship leader, so he sings and he plays his guitar.
All right.
We just brought in a guy named Danny who is a phenomenal juggler, and he plays Waluigi. And then our actress who plays Princess Peach, she's a face painter and a temporary tattoo person. So each person does something different. And so this evolved into the way we introduce the show is we go, hi, I'm a Mario and I'm a Luigi. And I'm sure you all know about us in the Mario world. But you know what Nintendo is great at? They're great at telling you all the things that we do the same that we're great at. I mean, plumbing, that's a snap for us, Oh, rescuing beautiful princesses, we could do that in our sleep. Overthrowing reptilian dictators, that is a snap. But they don't tell you what we are good at that is different. Like, I'm a magical Mario. Luigi is the musical Mario. But he can't do a magic, and I can't play a guitar. So we thought, wouldn't it be great in this world where people are divided over differences these days to put together a show that celebrated our differences and brought them together? So that is what the message of the Mario players is.
Nice. I like that. And it brings different gifts into the fold and uses them together, which is pretty much what God does on a much larger scale, is bringing all the gifts that people are willing to give and willing to let him use and creating something special, especially for kids kids are just taking the brunt of the last 2 years because there's so much confusion, so much angst. And I think people are forgetting that, the kids need a little bit more stability around them. So having that respite, I think, is invaluable. So that's really awesome.
One other thing that I should mention about the Mario players, I'm not going to tell you who, but we do. There are not everybody who's in my Mario group are believers, and there's a reason for that. I wanted to do that originally, but no. If you're holding out for just Christians who have the performance skill level you need to put a show on like this, you could be waiting forever sometimes.
Right.
And the other reason is because if I didn't let somebody into the show because they don't believe what me and Ben do, then in some ways, I'm a hypocrite. I'm doing the very opposite of what the show is standing for.
Interesting.
And sometimes, I mean, Christian films will use non-Christian actors, and the reason for that is because sometimes the audience isn't the only people that are being ministered to. So I'm a firm believer in that.
Yeah, I think that, or I'm pretty sure that that Vindication does the same thing. Is not everybody on set is a fully engulfed practicing Christian. But again, that there's opportunities there for Jared and those that do believe to pour in and invest in those actors. So I do want to talk to Vindication a little bit because it is a mutual interest on ours, on both of our parts.
Yes, it
so
is.
let's do that after we go through my favorite part of every show. And hear your testimony, because one of the things that we share each episode is hearing somebody's faith journey. Did it start as a child in a Christian home? Did you find faith on your own? And what led you to that journey and to that place?
Well, believe it or not, I actually have a magic trick that goes along with that. So this is perfect.
Perfect.
Mm-hmm. Now, you'll have to bear with me, because normally when I do this, I have a volunteer beside me, but I couldn't get a volunteer for tonight. So I'll just have to do this as best I can. Believe it or not, I'm a little different than most Christian magicians. Your average Christian magician, I know that's saying one thing because we're not very average, but your average Christian magician is a Christian or a minister who wants to minister to people, and he picks up magic later on. Now, I'm actually the opposite of that. I started doing magic when I was 6. Now, I was raised in a Christian home. My parents were going to the Salvation Army when I was born, and when I was about in kindergarten or first grade, I think we started going to the Nazarene Church.
Okay.
And I'm still going there to this day. And, I understood what, being saved meant. It was told to me, and I had a grasp of it by the time I was in 4th grade. And I remember praying this really quick prayer in my bedroom saying, "Oh, dear Lord, please, I don't want to go to hell," basically. Is basically what I was doing.
Sure.
And I was still, into magic and stuff like that. And then I actually had this idea. I would watch every magician on TV, and I actually remember thinking once, oh, one day I'm going to make them disappear. But like a lot of people, I realized that God had a different plan than I did. 2 of my greatest supporters as a child were my grandparents on my mom's side, and they were still in the Salvation Army. And the Salvation Army we used to attend had a gospel magician come for a whole week. And I think it was about the 4th night that they did an altar call. And, I said, I kind of made it, but I wasn't quite sure I had actually meant it. So it was the fact that they were talking about God wants to have a relationship with you through his son that finally hit me, and it wasn't out of fear. So even though I maybe prayed that quick prayer when I was in 4th grade, it wasn't until I was 13 that I jokingly tell people that's the night I became the Great Scott. Because that was when I realized there was more to magic than just, being a performer. But here's something a lot of people don't talk about in their testimony. Even when they've accepted it, sometimes they still live with the attitude of, "You're not the boss of me." And I could say I probably did that through a lot of my high school years, even though I knew Christ. And sometimes you can make unwise decisions and place your life into the wrong hands. And when that happens, getting things back together under your own power can pretty much seem impossible. But if you place your life into the master's hands, everything comes together.
Wow.
Romans 8:28. All things do work together for those who love the Lord.
Amen.
And to maybe elaborate just a little bit on that, I am someone who is one of those people who honestly, in my opinion, has one of the most boring testimonies on the face of the earth. I have been clean and sober my whole life, never touched drugs, never touched alcohol. Magicians are actually encouraged not to because it slows down your dexterity. And I'm going to be 44 next month. I basically have no skeletons in my closet whatsoever. It's all been eclipsed by this insatiable desire to perform.
Yeah.
And I wish I had more for you, but it's basically, it really is that simple. It really is that simple. And thankfully, God got a hold of me and not Hollywood.
Yeah. Here's something that I in doing something like 200 of these interviews so far, is that there are some that feel almost, and I'm not saying that you feel this way, but that it almost feels like they're ashamed that they don't have that powerful sin that God helped them overcome. And the way I look at it is, every salvation story is a miracle. Every salvation story is worthy, and there's none better than others because it's all pointing to the same place. And there are a lot of people who grow up in Christian homes that choose to become gospel callous to where it doesn't make a difference in their life anymore. They've heard it over and over again, and they've given up on it. So the fact that you're still able to, having been immersed in it, still find it and make it your own, that's still a miracle, and that's something worthy of celebration and never to be downplayed as, "Oh, I have a boring story." You don't.
Yeah. Well, to be honest with you, I know where some of those people, it breaks my, there's a lot of people I grew up with in youth group who sadly are not walking with the Lord today. And I understand how, one of the reasons why I got into Christian movies, I'm not going to name names here, but there's a whole bunch of Christian movies that I can think of where no matter what the story is, no matter what's going on, you can find the same John 3:16 speech in a lot of them.
Mhm.
And it gets to the point where, as a believer, you're watching it, you're trying to enjoy it, and you're like, oh, here we go again. And I'm like, man, I'm a believer who's getting tired of hearing the gospel.
Right.
You know what I mean? So you can't, but thankfully, I'm someone who has also seen enough to know that I cannot walk away from this. I
Right.
cannot. It's got to, because if I walk, I'm walking away from something I already know is the truth if I do that. So while I might have suffered from fear of missing out at times, to quote my Sunday school teacher when I told him this very same thing, he said, Scott, you don't have to fall off a bridge to know you don't want to fall off it.
Right.
So
Absolutely. Good word. Cool. So before a moment ago, we mentioned that we both really are huge fans of Vindication. You've had many of the cast on your roundtable shows, and
yes.
I've had a few of the cast on this podcast. I've had Venus Monique, Todd Terry, Jared O'Flaherty. Back when I was doing only audio versions, I had Candace Kirkpatrick on, and we talked about Vindication. So, we're huge fans, and it's really exciting to see Christian faith-based productions that aren't afraid of going there. They still
Right.
come out clean. It still fits through the what we do. Our comedy is, I say, we use a Philippians 4:8 filter. Whatever is good and pure and noble and praiseworthy. And if we can filter through that, then it's going to be good and honoring to God. And Jared is able to do that. So when did you first find Vindication, and what hooked you to the show?
It was Sean Justice who directed Reconciler and Lucifer and the Father. He had asked me if I had seen it. He had found it. How he found it, I don't know. But I watched it when it was on Amazon Prime, and I'd say it kind of got me hooked. What got me hooked is, I'm a man of God, but I'm also a cop. I'm also a cop show junkie. I admit it. I like it's when you're a magician, you like mysteries. What can I say? Now, do I wish to the dear Lord that a lot of the mysteries and cop shows were a lot less gory and a lot less sexually graphic these days? Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that comes down to why I like Vindication. Twin Master, the movie that Sean and I have been trying to make for 13 years.
Mm-hmm.
It's a thriller and it's a detective story. It's basically all of my education on how the procedural crime drama works put into a script that honors God.
Nice.
And does it in a way that you can. Another thing that I think sometimes people will misunderstand is they'll be like, oh, this thing glorifies violence. Don't confuse violence with suspense. They're not the same thing. Like the Reconciler is a very suspenseful movie. If you guys want, you can check it out. By the way, just a little commercial. You can check out this on Amazon Prime. It is now available. It's also available on the Christian Movies YouTube page. You'll have to watch it with commercials, though. So I'm in the movie. I play Ed, and I co-wrote it with Sean. But anyway, it's an example. Do you want to know what people have called the Reconciler?
What's that?
The faith-based version of Saw. If you can believe that. Or Saw with no gore is another word. But anyway, to be honest with you, there have been some suspenseful movies that I will look at and I will go, man, that thing was so well written story-wise. Why was it full of F-bombs and gory violence? You know what I mean? So I've spent my years studying the crime genres and like pulling out the elements that I believe work and leaving all the stuff that, as you said, does not fall under Philippians 4:8 behind. And it looks to me, one of the reasons why I was drawn to Vindication was it looks like Jared cracked that code and he cracked it big time. I was stunned to find out that Mr. O'Flaherty had never watched the cop show before. I was because he clearly understands the cop show formula and the cop genre.
Yeah, he does.
He knows how to keep an audience hooked. He knows how to do a non-linear storytelling with flashbacks, which has become very popular in television these days, especially with shows like This Is Us, just to name one.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, I really appreciate the fact, as I mentioned as we transition into this topic, is I really appreciate that he goes there. The first episode, which was just a short film that became the catalyst, was about adultery. Was about a guy caught in this thing where he had committed adultery in his heart, though he never got to the physical adultery.
Right.
And God intervened to prevent him from getting caught into the physical adultery, which would have ended his life.
Mhm.
And so he went there in the first one, and then all these film festivals are telling Jared, "Hey, you should really follow this this Detective Travis. We think he's an interesting character." And so then they start going on with the story.
Yeah. Detective Travis falls into the history of television characters like Steve Urkel and Fonzie on Happy Days that were supposed to be like this one throwaway acting job that ended up becoming their own show.
Right. And I don't know if Todd Terry would appreciate that or feel insulted by being compared to the Fonz and to Urkel, but hey, if it ends up giving him a steady paycheck, I'm sure he appreciates it.
Well, actually, when I used them on one of my, before I was doing the roundtables, I was doing what I called virtual volunteer segments, which were a combination of me interviewing people and doing a magic trick with them. And Todd was one of my guests, so I actually already mentioned that to him.
Okay, nice.
Todd, if you're watching, I hope you understand.
And then in the second episode, I can't remember the young lady's name, but they had they brought in this brilliant young actress to deal with sexting and sharing, really giving into the pressure of sharing to her boyfriend what wasn't his to see, and how it cost her dearly, and the fact that they went there again to address it, to show how it can be addressed, how it can be dealt with without without splitting families apart or what have you. But
I see all these news reports about celebrities' photos, getting hacked off their phone or whatever, and then they're crying about, it's my phone, it's my problem. You never should have been taking those photos in the first place.
Yes.
You know what I mean? That's the one thing I cannot get my mind around, to be honest with you. I'm like, you don't have anything on your phone you don't want hacked. You know what I mean?
Right. And for me, I'm thinking, being maybe cynical, is like, you're probably not that upset that they got out, because now you're back in the public eye. Now your stock is rising.
Yeah.
But for me, my favorite episode, and because I work with women who survived sex trafficking, the episode called or Reverse Trafficked, where
when the guy's rescuing people and Travis can't get his head around it.
Right, exactly. And it's just the idea of how cool would it be to be that independently wealthy that you could go and buy freedom. And what's unfortunate here is, that there are people in the church, or people who call themselves Christians, who would be aghast at the idea of buying somebody's freedom, because you're just giving money to those handlers and you're making them rich. They're going to get rich anyway, but at least
don't get me started on the guilty by association hypocrisy that's in a lot of churches.
I hear you.
Yeah.
So I know you and I are both really excited also about season 3, which is getting ready to film in the next few weeks. So this is not spoilers, because we're friends with Jared. We talked to Jared, but we have no idea where he's going season 3. What is your prediction for who's going to be in the body bag?
You sure you don't want to start a debate here?
What's that?
I know, because I ran my theory by you once before, and you disagreed with it. So
yeah, I thought it'd be kind of fun to talk about that here in the last few minutes.
Okay, all right, fine. In my personal opinion, and some of this has to do with now. Okay, I don't think this is really a secret, but Vindication never knows when they're going to have another season after the one that they've done. And Jared fully admitted that he did that ending with the body bag so that he would more guarantee a season 3. But he's not sure that there's going to be a season 4.
Right.
Okay. He's not sure there's going to be a season 4. So the next season we're getting, there's a chance that could be the end of it. Okay. So I realize that this is a show that takes place in the real world, and I know that it's a show that is not afraid to, as you say, go there. Okay. But given the way that Tomlinson really has it out for Travis now because he is such a bad cop incarnate and he's the police chief.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot see this show functioning if he stays the police chief. Now, maybe Jared is more creative than I'm giving him credit for, and he has a whole idea of how that can happen. You know what I mean? Maybe a whole season about how Travis works under a police chief he knows is corrupt as heck. You know what I mean?
Right.
But my theory would be it's Tomlinson who's dead, because Jared already revealed on my roundtable that one of the things that we're going to do is see flashbacks to the year and a half in between season 1 and 2, and we're going to learn how Tomlinson went bad. In my opinion, it makes more sense to see that as a writer if he's the one who's dead.
Sure.
Okay, that's just my opinion.
Yeah.
Now, here's the thing. I think that sometimes when you reveal a big mystery as a writer, one thing you can do is have it just lead to more questions. Like right. I said that I really loved the procedural crime drama. There was a show that was on called Elementary that was a modern day version of Sherlock Holmes.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
There's one episode that they did that is totally brilliant. Within the first 7 minutes of the episode, you know who the killer is. But he was a hired gun, and it's about who hired him. And the person who could have hired him doesn't make any sense. It's just great writing, but you know who pulled the trigger in the first 7 minutes.
Mm-hmm. So it's more
like, okay, so sometimes shows will do things like that. In the first 7 minutes, you'll know who the killer is, but why they did it will keep you guessing. I can totally see Jared doing, in the first 2 seconds of Vindication season 3, you will know who's dead. But how they died and where everybody else is something you'll have to wait a couple episodes to find out. And we might not know the exact scenario of assuming that it is Tomlinson. If it is Tomlinson, the way I would do it if I was writing it is I would have it be Tomlinson and intercut with the flashbacks to how Tomlinson went bad is Todd Terry trying to solve his murder and find out where Chris is and where Anthony is and are they all right and what actually happened that led to that.
Yeah. Well, when we had the roundtable with
that's what I would do. That's what I would do. Now, Jared probably has a much better idea than that, but that's what I would do.
When we had the roundtable with the cast, it was bantered about that season 3 of Vindication is going sci-fi, and it's actually Travis looking at Travis in the body bag.
No.
It's
Todd Terry has a good sense of humor about those things.
Yeah. But for me, I'm thinking that the only way the early reveal works is if it is Tomlinson. I think that if it's anybody else, there has to be a build. There has to be a story of why this character is being knocked off. I think that if it's Chris Tanner, you have to build towards that. If it's Anthony, yeah, if it's him, you have to build towards that. But if it's Tomlinson, right, then you can do the big reveal and then explain why his life ended up there.
Yeah, there was a fourth person in that garage that was a throwaway character, one of Tomlinson's crony, henchman or whatever. But Todd Terry wouldn't have been upset at his death. He wouldn't have even known him. So it's not that guy. Yeah,
there was the henchman that was like the club owner that Trey went in to meet. And then there was also the building owner that owned the place that the creepy Instagram photo guy,
right,
who drove the DeLorean. Yes. I thought that was a great touch. Is this creepy guy is driving in a DeLorean? But then that building owner, he's very creepy, and he was the catalyst to reveal just how dirty Tomlinson was. Yeah, because that's who he was on the phone with when the creepy photo guy got busted. So it could be that little scrawny guy, and then they just spend the season developing him. But I think Tomlinson, if it's him, it's a big reveal at the beginning, and then we follow his story of how he went from kind of this almost aloof sergeant to now, the dead police chief who was really
right.
So
and it would be a way for Steve Mokate to stay in the show, even though it was him, because of all the flashbacks.
Exactly.
Yeah. We do know this because of what Jared said. Whoever is in the body bag has not been fired from the show because that character is going to be seen in the flashbacks they're going to do.
Yeah, And my favorite.
That's the one thing about television becoming so flashback happy. Just because your character's dead doesn't mean you're out of work as an actor.
Yeah, look at This Is Us. They killed off Jack in the first season.
Oh yeah,
and
Jack's been dead for 20 years since the show started, and yet he's still technically the star of the show.
Right. So really excited to see what they do in season 3 and see who's in the body bag. I jokingly kept saying that it's the person in the body bag is a PureFlix exec that doesn't renew the show for the next season. So yeah, really excited for the next season. You and I are both in the Vindication group to share the conversation. So if anybody is not yet in it, come join the conversation. If you've never seen the show, come learn about it. You connect with some of the actors and even some of the crew, as well as the writer Jared O'Flaherty. Now, Scott, as you know from seeing our episode with Todd Terry a few weeks ago, we have 2 final segments. One is called The Interrogation, 7 quick questions that otherwise wouldn't have fit in the interview. And then I'll be asking you your wise counsel for anybody that wants to use their gifts for God's glory. So let's get started with The Interrogation. First question. Who is in your music playlist?
Who is in my music playlist? A gospel group called the Three Heath Brothers, the Harp Twins, who are 2 people I think you should look into having on this show, and the Heath Brothers. I listened to Hanson, believe it or not. I've been listening to them ever since I was in college. At Christmas time, I'm always listening to Amy Grant's Christmas album.
Okay.
Enough. I have this one playlist that's called Songs I Like that are song styles and artists all over the map. Half of them I can't even remember who sings them. It's just I hear a song I like, I put it on my playlist. Okay. And half the time I couldn't tell you what the album was from or whatever. So I think my playlist is too lengthy to actually mention them all, but those are a few right there. I have one playlist called Sibling Bands. I've always loved bands that are sibling, and on that I have a group called Taylor Red, which are 3 triplet sisters, the Harp Twins, as I mentioned, the Bacon Brothers, Kevin Bacon and his brother Michael, who sing together.
Okay.
And Hanson. So
very good. Number 2, what is your favorite comfort food?
Cheeseburgers, definitely.
Cheeseburgers. Have you had an Impossible Burger?
Yeah, and I never will again.
I have not yet been that brave, so I probably will never do the Impossible Burger.
I tried an Impossible Burger at Wahlburgers, and then the second time I tried it, it wasn't as good as the first time. I don't know what happened. So I gave up on them.
Yeah. So how do you relax?
How do I relax? I lay on the couch that's about 10 feet away from me right now, and I will watch something on Amazon, a show on Amazon Prime I bought if there's nothing on TV. Okay.
All right. Do you have any regrets or things that you wish you could do over?
Maybe I would put a little bit more effort in school if I had a chance to do it over. I basically C+'d my way through school. Mm-hmm. So I think maybe I would have, this is a little bit maybe too personal, but I think that I maybe would have been a little bit more courageous in trying. I'm such a workaholic. I'm about to turn 44 and I'm still single. Mm-hmm. But it's not, some people say it's not for lack of trying. In my case, it is for a lack of trying. I never really, I've always been better independent. I guess there's a part of me that wishes I would have tried that a little bit more. Again, if it's too personal, I apologize. But
oh no, this platform is for you, and maybe cathartic just to get some of these things out. So feel free.
Yes.
All right. Question number 5. Other than Jesus, which is a easy and obvious answer, what character from Scripture has taught you the most?
That's a tough one. I guess I got to go with Peter, not only because he wrote the book that has my life verse, but also because talk about a guy who messed up a lot and still got forgiven for it. So
yeah,
and put his foot in his mouth a lot. So
oh yeah, yeah. 1 minute he's being told, "It's on this rock I will build my church," and a few verses later, "Get behind me, Satan."
Right.
So that's a tough rise and fall for any man. Question number 6. What is something few people know about you?
I'm not sure. I really kind of live my life on my sleeve. Really, I'm not that. Let me see. Let me see if I can think of something real quickly. What is something not a lot of people know about me? It's sad when you can't think of anything, really.
No problem. All right. Well, we'll move on to question 7. You and I have both submitted for a couple of the roles for season 3. What would your ideal role be on Vindication?
Well, I actually had this idea many years for with all the cop shows that I've been watching. And I think it's an issue. I mentioned this to Jared. It's an issue that I don't think Vindication would have trouble tackling. When you are a single man who entertains kids for a living, you got to be the epitome of extra careful. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. One of my rules is I can never be the only adult in the room. And I've actually sadly seen it happen. Again, I'm not going to mention names. But, you have one small little misunderstanding is a career ender when you're a magician. And believe it or not, early in my career, I got looked upon as strict because I was being almost panicky to the point of being extra careful.
Gotcha.
So I always had this idea for a cop show about one of the main cops knew this magician who entertained his kids' parties, who got falsely accused. And he decided to make it his mission in the episode to clear the magician's name. Now, what I would say to anybody who wrote it that I give this idea to, this would be the one rule I would give them. You can take this story any way you want. The magician can just not be guilty. You can have him guilty of anything else. Like, for example, one twist that I thought is the reason for the misunderstanding was the magician was innocent of child molestation, but he was guilty of, say, having an affair with the kid's mom or something.
Yeah.
And that's why the misunderstanding happened. So you could in other words, they could take the story anywhere they wanted to. Like, this guy wasn't squeaky clean, but he wasn't that. You know what I mean? So that's a role that I thought would be willing to tap, because I think I could really get the emotion of how sad I would be if I was in that situation. So I think that would be I think on a cop show like Vindication, that would be a role that I would want to tackle if they decided to go there.
All right. That's excellent. I can see that. And for me, as somebody that's a part of an improv troupe, that's just me and six women, I kind of have the same fear of I want to protect them and their husbands and their marriages.
Yeah.
Not because I
don't only avoid evil, but the appearance of it as well.
Exactly. Because and that's why I kind of encourage and really appreciate that my wife comes to all the rehearsals and shows, so that there is that appearance of accountability. Not that there would be anything that would happen without her there, but again, the appearance of evil, the inference of one dude alone in a building with a bunch of women, that's scandalous. But it's kind of
it's funny. That even works its way into the Mario show as well, because my best friend, Ben, who plays Luigi, he's been happily married to his college sweetheart ever since they were in college. They have 4 kids. Mm-hmm. And his wife is just wonderful for for sharing her husband with me as my best friend, and letting me cart off to all these kids' parties and, play around with him. And he's the best friend I've ever had. I've known him for over 20 years, and we can predict. No one could have played my brother except him, because I don't have a brother in real life. Mm-hmm. And the one character that will never be in the Mario players is Princess Daisy, because Princess Daisy is Luigi's love interest in the Mario game. So what we do is we do this joke so Ben doesn't have to take off his wedding ring. We say, "Oh, Luigi and the Princess Daisy are married now, and they have 4 kids." Okay. And this allows us to not have to have, because if I had an actress there, because Ben's wife is not an actress, she's very shy. They're the epitome of opposites attracting. Mm-hmm. You would never get her on a stage. His daughters are another story, but I'm not going to talk about that. But anyway, so the last thing I would ever do is put my happily married friend in a situation where he has to pretend to be all sweet on another actress who would probably be younger than him. Because I would not want to. Eva's not. I just gave her name away. Ben's wife is nice enough to be great about Ben performing with me and stuff like that. So I would always want to be respectful of her in their marriage.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So it's cool to see somebody else that understands, kind of the anxiety and sometimes the fear of just that appearance, and really being cognizant of how things look.
When you're about to turn 44 and you've been single your whole life, people make assumptions, unfortunately. So kind of comes with the territory.
And it's one of those unfortunate things, because a 44-year-old single woman never married would never face that kind of question. And it's unfortunate. And it's unfortunate because there are enough stories that are covered that make people wonder. But what I can't get over is that there are some adults that I have to actually explain this to. I used to do table hopping restaurant magic at a McDonald's for a kids' night. Mm-hmm. And one night I'm there, and there's a dad with his 3 kids for dinner. And I go over and I do like 2 tricks at each table. I go over and I start doing the trick. The dad gets up to get ketchup and napkins, so I step back. Okay? Mm-hmm. I start performing more. He forgot something, so he goes back. So I step back. He comes back and he goes, "Oh, I'm not watching. You can keep performing." And I'm like, "No, I can't." He's like, "Why not?" And he goes, "Because you're the only grown-up at this table." And he's like, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. So. Yeah. And it's just a good rule of thumb. Protect you, protect the kids. Exactly. So, yeah. All right. Well, Scott, the final question we ask every episode is, for anyone that wants to step up and use their gifts for God's glory, whether it's magic, whether it's music, whether it's acting, comedy, whatever it may be, what would your wise counsel be for that person? Don't let anybody tell you that you can't. That's the best. That's the best I got. One of the guys who's in my Mario group his name is Justin, and he's never wanted to be anything but an actor, but he's a type 1 narcoleptic. And people will not let, because the guy can be scared to sleep, people won't hire him for stuff. If they discriminated against someone because of their color for their skin, they get sued. But no, apparently discriminating for that is okay. So that's the reason why he plays shy guy. That's the reason why I have him in the group. Yeah. Because I'm going to give him a chance where nobody else did. Yeah. And therein is your ministry, is allowing people a chance to do what's on their heart, and that opens the door to ministry. Whether or not he's saved, he at least gets to experience that inclusion and that love of Christ through that simple gesture. Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, Scott, it's been a pleasure spending so much time with you one-on-one. I want to encourage everybody to find your Facebook pages, and also find you at greatscottmagician.com. And next week, we will have Steve Rivera, owner of Gutty's Comedy Club in Indianapolis and in Minneapolis. We'll be talking about comedy and also the Gutty's Metaverse. We'll be talking about that next weekend. Or next week right here on Gifts for Glory. So I see a card in your hand. It looks like you have one more trick for us. I was just about to ask that. Do we have time for a trick before we go? Yeah, let's do it. Okay. Now, this is a trick I have to move the camera so you can see this table that I've been putting everything on during this show. So I wanted to save this one potentially to last so that you could. So let me just move down here. Oh, hold on. Okay. Can you see the top of this table? Okay. Yeah. Okay. This is another Uno card trick. Well, you know what? I'll let you decide. Would you like to see another Uno card trick, or would you like to see something else? Sure. Looks like you're ready for the Uno, so go ahead with that one. Okay. So once again, I'm still working on a gospel application for this one. I don't have it yet. But once again, we have the 4 sevens here. Now, you see the 4 corners of this table? Mm-hmm. Dave, I want you to tell me which color to put in each corner. First of all, pick a color. Let's go with blue. Okay, which corner do you want blue in? I'll go your bottom right. Over here? Yeah. Okay, can you still see that there? Okay. Yeah. Pick another color. We'll go with the red. Go diagonally across from the 7, or from the blue. Okay. Over here. Yeah. All right. Pick another color. Last card's going to pick itself, obviously. Obviously. We'll put the yellow in the corner closest to you. Okay. So green goes over here. Yeah. All right.
Now I'm going to put 3 cards on each of these. This is not the trick, by the way. This is just part of. Okay. Now, what was the last card you picked? The last card you picked was green, right?
The last one, I put the yellow closest to you.
Yeah, but the last one I put down was green, right?
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So since that was the last one I put down, that's where we're going to end. So we're going to rewind and start over here.
Okay.
Now remember, you picked this order, so I couldn't have known that. All right?
Right.
Okay. What's on the blue card? On the blue card are these 3 blank instructional cards. This one has switch hands with another player written in because it allows you to come up with your own rules. But here's what we're going to do. We're going to take this blue 7 right here. We're going to turn it over and have it face the other 3 cards. So we got these 3 instructional cards, and we have a blue 7, right?
Mm-hmm. Huh.
All right. Yellow 7 next. On the yellow 7, we have, once again, the card that everybody loves to dish out, but everybody hates to get. And you said families have been broken up by the draw 4 wild card. Okay, now watch this. This time I'm going to make it a little simpler. I'm going to turn this over and have it face the other cards. But you might think it's gone already, so let me show it to you that it's still there. You see the yellow 7?
Yep. Uh-huh.
I'm moving these around so you can see I'm not holding 2 cards together.
Okay.
Okay. Red 7 is next. Have you ever heard the expression, now you see it, now you don't?
Yes.
Well, you have to remember that for this. On the red 7, we have the card that anybody can play at any time because it can be anything, which is the wild card. Now, I'm going to take this red 7 and have it turn over so that it faces the other cards. But if I turn the pack this way and flip through these, 7's going to be up and the other cards are going to be down, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now you see a red 7, right? Now you see a wild card. What's left?
The green 7. The green 7.
Which was the last one I put down, right? Because of the order that you picked.
Right.
And I couldn't have known that that was going to be the last one I was going to put down. And I really didn't, by the way.
Huh. So now everybody that's watching this is going to watch in slow-mo on YouTube and on Facebook, try to figure this one out.
Exactly.
Good stuff. Good job. So for those listening, greatscottmagician.com, and he's got links to his IMDb page as well as YouTube and Facebook there. And also search for Lucifer and the Father, the short film that he's already got out there. And also be sure to like.
It's not out there yet. It's coming out soon.
Okay, it's coming out soon. Sorry about that. And then also be sure
Reconciler
to
is the one that's already out.
Reconciler is out. You can find that on Amazon Prime and YouTube. And you can find the Great Scott Magician, not musician, magician, at TGSMP, and the Mario Players at Mario Players on Facebook. So be sure to like, follow, and check out the different things he's got going on. Scott, thank you so much for being on Gifts for Glory.
Well, thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming. And again, next week, join us for Steve Rivera from Gutty's Comedy Club and Gutty's Metaverse. We're going to be talking about comedy, clean comedy, and what it's like to be a business owner, and all the different things going on at the 2 Gutty's locations. So until next week, we hope you have a blessed week, and thanks for tuning in.